To my next topic, because there's been a lot of talk right now. It's been dubbed streamflation, how it's really rivaling the cable bundle at this point, which is a story that we've been following for quite some time. And it comes on the heels of Disney announcing a lot of price hikes. And there's a new report from Nielsen that showed linear television viewership, so that traditional viewership on cable and broadcast, that actually declined below 50% for the first time ever. So we're at the point where linear TV, it seems like we've reached a point of no return. That's according to an analyst note that I was reading earlier today. So there's a lot to digest here when it comes to where media is going. Right. Streaming services obviously seems to be the next frontier, but even there, we saw a significant loss of subscribers among some of the top streaming services like Disney Plus, like Max. Now, a lot of that was because of these rebrands. But we just seem to be at this critical juncture when it comes to...
Well, it's interesting you say critical juncture because it was Tim Nall, the analyst that you were quoting, and he also pointed out, okay, so we've known this trend for a while.
Right.
Who's actually well positioned in it? And you think about, like, what's the trade, right? And he pointed out Comcast and their Peacock service. He said about 85% of Comcast's revenue is still coming from the linear cable side. That just doesn't feel good when you think long-term about these trends, right? If people are moving away from linear cable, to be positioned that way seems pretty interesting.
And Disney's the opposite.
Then you look at Disney, and it's the opposite. And Disney thinks that they're going to have more money from the streaming side, the D2C side, than they are the linear side. Remember Bob Iger teasing out that they might even want to get rid of that linear side.
And to clarify, that's DTC ad revenue.
Right.
DTC is still struggling overall with profitability, but ad revenue, interestingly enough,
so to drive ad revenue
side,
from the streaming side, I think is pretty interesting to be able to see who's sort of positioning themselves well there. But then how do you keep subscribers coming in? There's so many questions that build with it.
And another thing, too, is right now we see the average household holds about 4 streaming services, if I read that right. That averages about $30. And really with this new take from Netflix, really cracking down on password sharing, I know I'm certainly sort of refiguring what I want to pay, what I don't necessarily want to pay, because I do want Netflix back. I'll admit, I was one of those people. And so really here, you know, when I think about Max, we were talking before, but I only got it to watch, and just like that, the Sex and the City reprise. And so really sort of re-strategizing, rethinking my budgeting on how exactly and where I'm willing to spend.
Yeah, and the password sharing crackdown that you mentioned, Netflix saw a rise in subscribers, 5.9 million subs added in the quarter. I think more to come on that too.
I've been watching Suits on Netflix.
It's making a comeback. It's a classic Netflix effect.
But I think that gets to the story we're talking about in the sense of why linear TV is still dropping.
Right.
Because you can take a show that I didn't know existed over the last decade, resurface it, put it at the top of the page, make it look fresh, and I'm watching it, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, is that Meghan Markle? Like the Meghan Markle I watched a documentary about?
Versus a new, completely new show.
Yeah.
Just a completely different narrative that's ultimately
it keeps people paying for Netflix.
Exactly.
Very smart.
It's interesting, too, because during the writer's strike, CBS is airing old episodes of Yellowstone on CBS. So you wonder if maybe that could be, even once the writer's strike hopefully gets resolved, if that could be an opportunity for some of these media giants that do have exposure on the linear side. But, you know, certainly there's a lot to navigate right now when it comes to these services.
Yeah.